Vishnu Padaya Krishna Kristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shamini Tiname Krishna Kristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shamini Tiname Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Shunyavadi Paschatya Satharine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Shunyavadi Paschatya Satharine. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I first met Srila Prabhupada in December of 1969. Previous to that, I had read his Bhagavad Gita twice. And I don't feel that I have any special qualification. But I do feel I have one qualification, and I think this qualification is necessary for all of us to have. After I heard from Srila Prabhupada, and after I met him, I did something very intelligent. I accepted him. And after I accepted him, I did something even more intelligent. I never left him. And hopefully by the end of this year, I will be writing a book on Prabhupada. And I'm thinking of titling that book, An Ordinary Person with an Extraordinary Spiritual Master. And the idea being that we're all ordinary people, and we all can become extraordinary people by the association of extraordinary people, if we are intelligent enough to not run away from them. So sometimes people ask, what does it mean to be a disciple? Ultimately, it means not to run away from the good instruction that you get from your guru. Or sometimes I say, the duty of the guru is to take you back to Godhead, and your duty is not to fight on the way, kicking and screaming. No, I don't want to do this. That's intelligent. So I personally feel the most intelligent thing I've ever done is I couldn't organize the meeting of Prabhupada, but after that, I never ran away. And if we all do that, it is not going to be any different for you than it was for me or any of Srila Prabhupada's disciples. I'm sure all of you, at one time or another, have thought, I wish I could have been there with Prabhupada. Can you take off the reverb? This has got reverb. Hare Krishna. You hear that? Or echo? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Rama. The spiritual master agrees to take the disciple back to Godhead. He signs a contract. And the disciple also signs a contract, and the contract basically is, I will not fight when you're taking me back to Godhead. That's the basic contract. I will take you back to Godhead. and then you will say, and I will not fight it. I will go along with it. That's the intelligent decision we all have to make. And you're probably thinking, I wish I was there with Prabhupada. I wish I could have met him. My life would be different if I met him. But we have some statistics. You're here now. You're in this temple. You're participating in Krishna consciousness. Many of Prabhupada's disciples are not doing as well as you. So that should show you that having the personal association is not as important as you might think it is. It is important if you take advantage of it. But Srila Prabhupada often said something which we didn't maybe understand clearly, or maybe we didn't want to understand. Thank you. He always said, the words of the spiritual master are more important than the association. So I'll tell you some stories, and you've probably seen this also in modern day ISKCON, but I spent a lot of time in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles was, during Prabhupada's time, was the world headquarters, or the Western world headquarters for ISKCON. And when I was living there, there were about 350 devotees living in the community, which meant it's basically one street, and all around the temple, within a half a block of the temple, were devotees, and the temple had bought about 5 apartment houses. So devotees were living either next to the temple or across the street. And every time Prabhupada would come to Los Angeles, there would be more devotees. More devotees would come. And when he would leave, those devotees would go. And the interesting thing is, you never saw those devotees until Prabhupada came. And then that whole year, when he was gone, they were gone. So they would show up inspired by his association, by his vani, vapu, his body. But they were not inspired, or couldn't be inspired. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. But unfortunately, they weren't able to take advantage of his vani. So, not all of them, but definitely some of them, in Prabhupada's absence, were not doing well. And they would do very well in his presence. And Prabhupada said, the reason the vani, or the instructions, are better is because the instructions are always there. So if you depend on personal association, you won't get personal association all the time. But if you depend on instruction, they're always there, whether he's present or whether he's not present. And many devotees, especially those who were engaged in book distribution, when Prabhupada would come, they could have had the opportunity to be with him and not go out on book distribution. But I think 100% of them felt, and you can ask any Prabhupada disciples if they feel this way, they actually felt closer to Prabhupada doing book distribution than they did sitting with Prabhupada. So they could have gone around with Prabhupada as he walked around the temple, or they could have gone on book distribution. And they said, I felt closer serving the order. So that's even in Prabhupada's presence. When he was in the temple, devotees were feeling that. Feeling the power of vani, of serving the order and hearing the order. So the reason I'm saying this is to help you realize that even during Prabhupada's presence, his vani was sometimes being neglected by some, and by other devotees being embraced. and with different results, as we explained. So the same thing today, it's not any different. Prabhupada is still present by his Vani, and you are all his followers. Even if you're not personally initiated, one time Prabhupada said, reading my books, you are initiated. That's an initiation, because that's like a Siksha initiation. It's not an official ceremony, but the essence of the initiation is to follow the instruction. So what if you take initiation and you don't follow the instruction? And you don't take initiation, but you do follow the instruction. Who is the real disciple? The initiated one or the uninitiated? The so-called uninitiated is the real disciple, and the so-called initiated is not really the disciple. So one who follows the order, who's connected to the order, that's the real disciple, which means you also, by following Prabhupada's order, you're his disciple. It may not be official in a formal ceremony, but your spiritual master, or your spiritual master to be, whoever will initiate you, is connecting you with Prabhupada. Is not trying to imitate Prabhupada or get in the way, but only trying to help you connect more deeply. That maybe traditionally is not always how it's been, although we can't say it's not been that way, but especially in our movement, it's that way. So you all have the potential to have an intimate relation with Prabhupada, as intimate, as close, as deep as any initiated disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And the more you take up his mission and his service, the more you will feel that connection. And I'm sure many of you have this experience. By taking up some responsibility in Prabhupada's movement to help spread Krishna consciousness, you feel connected. You feel, I'm pleasing Prabhupada, that he's reciprocating with me. He's smiling on me. Many devotees, Prabhupada disciples during his time, would have dreams in which Prabhupada would come and guide them and inspire them or pacify them. And because Prabhupada is not a personality that's limited by the dimensions of time and space of this world, he can come to you also. And I'm sure some of you or many of you have had that experience where Prabhupada has come to you in a dream or in some way inspired you. So there's no bar in connecting with Prabhupada because of time or initiation. The only bar would be our choice to, or our illusion that we're separated, or we can't be close, or we can't feel close to Prabhupada. And as you learn about, I have such a beautiful story. This is amazing. So there was a devotee who was working at, I think in those days it was called ITV. They were producing the Acharya series. Have you seen that Acharya series? It came out. It's an old series, like 5 videos, different scenes with Srila Prabhupada. I mean, there's a lot of Prabhupada videos. This is called Acharya. And this devotee was working on that. And he was making, I think, copies or editing. So he said he became so close to Prabhupada because that was a service every day he was seeing that. And so he was on book distribution, and he was, I guess, he was talking about Prabhupada, maybe distributing Lilamrita or otherwise distributing one of Prabhupada's books. And he was talking about Prabhupada very enthusiastically. And the way he was talking, the man thought, he definitely knows him and spent time with him. And so the man said, when did you meet him? And this devotee had this realization that it's like he never thought that I never met Prabhupada. It was at that point when he had to give a date that he realized I never actually met him. But the way he was feeling and the way he was talking was as if he had met Prabhupada, had been with him. And he was it kind of shocked him when he said, when did you meet him? He said, I never did. Like, how could you speak that way about someone that you never met? And so we can all be that way, and it would be to our great benefit to be that way, and I would go so far as to say it's necessary for the strength and endurance of our movement that we be that way. Because Prabhupada said everything, he set the foundation, and all we're trying to do is follow in his footsteps. And no devotee, no matter how Krishna conscious they are, would ever for a moment think that they have any independence or any intelligence greater or different than Prabhupada to contribute to the spreading of Krishna consciousness. They will always think, whatever intelligence I have, how it can be employed in Krishna service, following the instructions and example that Prabhupada gave. And unfortunately, on occasion, devotees would interpret or speculate on instructions that they got from Prabhupada, and they would misunderstand, misapply. And Prabhupada called that over-intelligence. So over-intelligence, it almost sounds like a good thing, like you're very intelligent. But Prabhupada meant you're so intelligent, sarcastically, that you're a fool. You're over-intelligent. You're using your intelligence to misunderstand or divert yourself. So I'll tell you a story. It's funny. I have a little saying that when I was a young devotee, I wasn't smart enough to be over-intelligent. But as an older devotee, I have to be careful, because it's a lot easier now for me to be over-intelligent because I think I know something. I mean, I have 50 years more of learning. And so I'm so intelligent, I can, well, Prabhupada actually didn't really mean this, he meant that, and I mean, sometimes we have to do that, and we come to the right conclusion, but there's always a danger. So when we were young, we didn't know anything, so whatever Prabhupada said, that was law, it was fact, and that's just what we did. So there was some trouble in the movement, and we used to go out on the weekends and Harinam till midnight or 1 o'clock. So we didn't have Mangal Arati. My initiation day, I went to bed at 2 a.m. I woke up at 8 a.m., took a shower, and went to the temple for initiation. And that was normal, because we stayed out probably till 1 o'clock, and then came back and then got ready. So I think I went to bed at 2. So Prabhupada stopped that because there were problems in the movement, and Prabhupada said, no, you should go to Mangal Arati. So don't ever go out at night, don't do anything at night. So I was temple president, I was a young devotee, and some Indians invited us to come to their home for kirtan and prasadam, at 7 o'clock. And I said, I can't go out at night. And they said, why? I said, my spiritual master said, we can't go out at night. So I didn't fully understand, why Prabhupada gave that instruction. I mean, I understood a little bit, and we were staying out very late and not getting up, and we needed the morning program. But all I knew is Prabhupada said, don't go out at night. And this man couldn't understand, why can't you just come to my house? I said, no, I can't. My Guru Maharaj said, you can't go out at night. He said, why? You can't go. No, he said you can't go. So you might think, well, that's pretty stupid and fanatical. But that's why I say, when I was a young devotee, I wasn't smart enough to speculate on what Prabhupada said. I just did what he said, and that's what we all did. And that of the two mistakes, that's a better mistake to make. If it's either being too stupid to understand and just following, or being over-intelligent and then, kind of flexing the instruction to something it's not really Prabhupada would want. It's better just to be too stupid to be over-intelligent. So we need some of that stupidity a little bit to maintain Krishna consciousness, because there are foundations. It doesn't mean we shouldn't think and be innovative. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be philosophical and so on. It just means we should be cautious that to study what Prabhupada did and why he did it, and not be so quick to change things, unless we're sure by changing it, it's going to have a more beneficial result and it hasn't compromised our principles. Then, yes. So that is the duty of all of you who are part of this movement. Because many of you are sitting here, been devotees 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but as you go on in devotional service, and as the Srila Prabhupada disciples leave, those who've been in 50 plus years, then those of you who are younger now will be the older devotees. You'll be, your hair will turn gray, you'll have wrinkles in your face, and everyone will come to you and say, you must be a senior devotee. Can I ask you a question? Why do you think I'm senior? Well, you have gray hair and wrinkles, so you must be, right? And you will be considered an advanced senior devotee if you have gray hair and wrinkles. I guarantee you. And people are going to go to you and ask you, what did Prabhupada mean when he said this? What happened? Did you hear from Prabhupada's disciples? What did they say? That's going to happen to you. Believe it or not, I can guarantee it will. If you stay in ISKCON long enough, people will eventually be asking you about Prabhupada, and there won't be any Prabhupada disciples to tell them. Why don't you go ask them? There won't be any. You will be where it stops. That's why it's important for senior people to understand Prabhupada and understand what his mission is, what his heart is, because you'll be the ones who are inheriting that mission. And if you misunderstand, it's going to go off. And if you misunderstand, and this continues, and the next generation slightly misunderstands, and the next one slightly misunderstands, and then we're not going to have the movement that Prabhupada established. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. So, when you're studying Prabhupada and learning about Prabhupada, don't just think you're learning about that for your own benefit. Think that I need to learn about this because I need to understand it so I can share it and apply it. Because if I don't understand it, I will not apply it properly. And whenever you have a position of responsibility, any authority over people, you want to be sure that what you're teaching them is what Prabhupada taught. What you're telling them is what Prabhupada would tell them. Hare Krishna. Now, I was thinking, I actually gave class, most of you weren't there, I actually gave class this morning on Srila Prabhupada. And we didn't have enough time to answer everyone's questions. So I thought, perhaps we could take time for questions. If you want to ask what it was like to be with Prabhupada and questions like that, I'm happy to answer those questions. I'm sure you want to know, right? What was it like to be with Prabhupada? You can't understand, because it wasn't like being with any other person you've ever been with. So what can I say?
Mataji asks, how did you meet Srila Prabhupada?
I believe that by the desire of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, many former devotees took birth in America around 1948 to between 1945 and 1955, which made them young adults in 1965. I was 15 in 1965, but I joined when I was 19. And the reason I say that, there's two reasons I say that. One reason is Prabhupada said it. He said, you are all sent by Lord Chaitanya, you're all associates. I don't know what that means, but and it's hard for me to say it because I'm one of them, so it sounds like I'm telling you, I'm an associate of Lord Chaitanya. I must have been a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta. So I don't want it to sound like that. But if you listen to the memories videos, the first question they ask is, how did you become a devotee? And you can just skip that because every story is exactly the same. Every story. I was looking for spiritual life when I was like 2 years old, like that. I was frustrated and I was taking drugs and doing this and traveling. And then I heard the kirtan and it was like I never heard anything like it and it was so special. Then I got the Bhagavad Gita and this was the book I was looking. Every single story is like that. You don't have to listen, just listen to one and you can know. Every devotee who tells how they joined, it's the same story, more or less. Well, Radha Swami, a little different, but that's special. But everybody else, more or less the same. So because of that, when I listen to the story, like every single story is the same. And as you're listening to it, you're thinking, where are the people like that today? In society. I was looking for spiritual life. I was praying to God. When I was 14, I did so many things. I was frustrated. Started doing meditating when I was 16. Interested in yoga. And nobody in those days was meditating and interested in yoga and anything. So I think we all. And then a devotee, he said to Prabhupada, he said, but you say, we were devotees in our last life. He said, but our upbringing, we ate meat, took drugs, everything, We broke all the principles in royal style. How could we have been devotees? Prabhupada said, I was just superficial. When you heard the kirtan, you came running. It's like, okay, you took birth in America to help me, so that's the life you have to live, born in America. There's no Vaishnavas there. Even if you're born in a Christian family, you're still going to eat meat. So it's superficial. When you heard the kirtan, you came running. It means you're a devotee. So I grew up in Los Angeles, and the temple, basically, it was the second temple, but the first temple in Los Angeles didn't last very long. So the first real temple in Los Angeles was 6 blocks from my house. That's pretty nice, right? See, I'm in high school and devotees are walking around. Who are devotees? And there's at that time, there's 5 temples in the whole world or something. And then I go away to school, and there's a temple. 1 block from the university, 6 blocks from where I live. I was always 6 blocks. Now where I live, I'm further from the temple than when I grew up. There I was 6 blocks. It's okay, at the university. And then the devotees gave a class at the university which was accredited, and it was a Bhagavad Gita class. And that's pretty cool, right? So I was writing my story, how I became a devotee, and after I wrote it, I said, the red carpet, Krishna put the red carpet, I didn't have to do it. It's like the moving sidewalks in the airports? You just get on and it moves. If you look at my story, which, it's actually, go to my website, it's on there. If you look at the story, it's like I didn't do anything. I just was there and everything happened. And I think for most devotees, it was like that. It was just, they didn't do anything. It was just, they were ready. One devotee told a story. I was, one of these stories. I was, the end of my life, hands and knees, praying, God, if you exist, give me a sign. I want to know you. Are you there? One of those stories, right? You have a story like that? It's like, I'm going to kill myself, or you show yourself to me. And the devotee said, 4 hours later, knock, knock, knock. Bhagavad Gita. So, I think when the disciple's ready, the guru shows up. So my story is just ready. At that point, I was ready. I couldn't become a devotee, a year before. I wouldn't have been ready, but I was ready. And then Bhagavad Gita came. The devotees were teaching it and I got credit for it. It was credited as a philosophy class. I mean, that's pretty good, right? And all you have to do is read Bhagavad Gita. No tests, no exams. Go to 2 Bhagavad Gita classes a week. It's pretty good, right? Get an A. So, when people ask, how did you become a devotee? I just say, it started in my last life. Because the story didn't, it's like if it's the movie, how Mahatma Das became a devotee, the movie starts in his last life, what he's doing, Somehow or other, I didn't make it in my last life. I messed up. And so I'm back again to try again, like we're talking about this morning. That's how'd you become a devotee? Last life. And that's how I feel, and that's what the astrologers also said. They said, you blew it. You almost made it, but you blew it. So, anyway, I think that's everyone's story, yes.
Did Prabhupada give you some personal instruction?
Oh, a few.
Which one?
Well, basically, Prabhupada's most of Prabhupada's instructions were acknowledgments of service and encouragement to continue. To continue. So sometimes I would do something and I would tell Prabhupada, this is what I'm doing. And he would say, I'm very happy. I would say I'm inspiring devotees to distribute books. And he would say, I'm very happy. He said, continue to inspire them, and then you will be inspired by inspiring them. It was a kind of a common theme. I think the funniest instruction I got, and it's very interesting also, that Prabhupada wanted his books distributed, and I thought, these rock bands are so popular, in those days, I don't know about now, but they do huge concerts, people would pay, 10,000, 20,000 people would come. And specifically, the whole hippie generation was being influenced primarily or significantly by the music. What the bands were saying was kind of creating the culture. So I thought, if we had a band, we could mold the culture towards Krishna consciousness. Because if the band became famous, once you're famous, people listen to you. And if you listen to the 60s music, there was lots of philosophy in that music. It wasn't about baby, I love you so much. At least in the late 60s, it was a lot of philosophy about life and so forth. So I wrote Prabhupada and I said, so, what about this idea, Prabhupada? We start a rock band, we become famous, then when we do the concerts, because people pay, as part of the concert, everyone who comes will get a Krishna book. So in one night, we can distribute 10,000 Krishna books. And Prabhupada said, there's a word called phantasmagoria. Phantasmagoria in English means something you dream up that's impossible. It will never happen. It's just, like, I'm going to become the president, the prime minister of Germany next year. And you haven't even graduated high school. That's like, it's not going to happen. Then Prabhupada said, he said, you will never become famous. He said, but your job, he said, you will never become famous. Don't try to become famous. Try to make Krishna famous. I have a godbrother who became famous. And after him telling me what happened to him after becoming famous, I was glad I got the blessing that I've never become famous, because if I did, I probably wouldn't be here right now talking to you. I don't know where maybe I would, but maybe not. But my past probably would have been different. Could you imagine 5 brahmacharis, age 20, becoming famous rock and roll stars with all these girls going, ah, and knocking on your door behind stage? I don't think it would be a good program. Anyway, so Prabhupada said something very interesting to me. I was thinking, if we become famous, we will have influence. This is what I thought I was thinking. We will have influence. People will listen to us. And it's a fact. If you're famous, they listen. And we can have influence over a whole generation because that's what was happening. Like the Beatles, they had so much influence on the way people were thinking. Rolling Stones, other bands. That's what I was thinking. And Prabhupada says, don't try to become famous. And I was thinking to myself, but I didn't say I wanted to become famous. I said I wanted our band to become famous so we could influence people. And Prabhupada is saying, thinking, knowing me, my heart, thinking, no, you want to be famous. You don't realize that you want to be famous. You just think you want to be famous to preach, but actually you have this latent desire to be famous. And it like hit me kind of like a train knocking you over. And it's a fact, when I was young, there was a song. And the words were, do you want to be a rock and roll star? Then listen to what I say, get yourself an electric guitar and learn how to play. It was I forget what band. And every young kid, where I grew up, Los Angeles, Hollywood, had an electric guitar, or had a few guitars, and wanted to be a rock and roll star, and I was one of them. And when Prabhupada said, don't try to become famous, I first thought, but I'm not trying to become famous. Why is Prabhupada saying that? And then I realized, actually, that was one of my ambitions. And Prabhupada just cut it. Said, don't go there. And he also said, anyway, it's not going to happen, so you're not going to be famous. Krishna doesn't want it, you're not that good, whatever. So, for me personally, that was like Prabhupada understood my heart. And he also understood that if I did become famous, that would have been the beginning of the end for my spiritual life, I think, at least temporarily. Prabhupada told me, I said, can I take sannyas? I was 24, I think. Definitely ready for sannyas, right? And I was married, and I had a son who was a year old. So I was definitely ready for sannyas, right? I mean, the experience of Grihastha life made me think I needed to take sannyas, but I can't handle this, let me out of here. Yeah, very immature. So Prabhupada said something interesting. He said, first you become ideal in Grihastha life, and then we consider sannyas. In other words, go through the ashrams, don't skip and be irresponsible in one ashram and think you can then succeed in another ashram. And we saw that that didn't work for most devotees. Or many of them took sannyas, but they couldn't do it. So I think that's a very important instruction. Like, do your duty, do it responsibly, be successful at it. Krishna will see that, he will promote you. When you are ready for seva, Krishna will give you seva, when you're able to do it. So do what you're doing now responsibly. Do it well, Krishna will see that, he'll give you more responsibility. Now, I have a funny story for you. I was saying this morning that Krishna saved me So many times he saved me. Something would happen really weird, like never happened before since the creation of Brahma. And then I would think, Krishna saved me. So after Prabhupada left, one of the leaders, he wanted me to take sannyas. Now I'm 29. And I was like, my big chance, let's do it. And I called my wife, okay, bye-bye, taking sannyas. It's like total crazy, right? And so I went to India in, I think it was 1980, March. I was on the list, I was going to get sannyas. Then I would have been 30 years old. And I don't think I was ready for it. No, actually, I know I wasn't ready for it. I think I would have been one of those numbers. Out of 44 sannyasis, only 17 made it. And the other 27? The other 27 didn't. I would have been 28. So I'm going to India, ready to take sannyas. And that year, 2 sannyasis had fallen down. So the GBC they were very concerned. And they put a moratorium that nobody can take sannyas until future notice. It was just, sannyas was called off. It's like, who knows when we're ever going to give it again. And they let one devotee do it, because that devotee was special. They let him through the back door, and they gave him sannyas, and it didn't last, he didn't make it. So I understood that Krishna was saying, no, I'm saving you. I don't want you to do this. Because I was still thinking foolishly I could do it and should do it, and Krishna was very kind on me. Somehow or other, I don't know, Krishna takes care of me. I think because I'm not so, like, what's the word? What's the word when you're, like, stubborn? Yeah, I wasn't so stubborn. Like, I must do this. I was always like, okay, Krishna, let's see what you want. And so, and maybe we can say that was Prabhupada intervening, saying, become responsible grihastha first. Do that right, and then you go to the next level. So when I asked Prabhupada to take sannyas when I was 24, his secretary once met me and he said, you know, that letter you got from Prabhupada telling you that, be responsible grihastha? He said, this is what actually Prabhupada, he said, I wrote that letter, but this is what Prabhupada said. He said, Srila Prabhupada, we have another sannyas letter, because many devotees were writing Prabhupada to take sannyas because they were frustrated in grihastha life. Young men, and they didn't realize what grihastha life was like, responsibilities and so forth. And so Srila Prabhupada, another grihastha letter. Yes, who is it from? Mahatma Das. Tell him he's a nonsense. That was what Prabhupada said. So that was like a code word for write this letter, be responsible grihastha. Code word, tell him he's a nonsense. So that was good to hear, because that was true. That was kind of Prabhupada to say, tell him he's a nonsense. He should have said, tell him he's a complete idiot, fool, rascal for thinking like that. But that was Prabhupada's kindness. Tell him he's a nonsense. Code word for being irresponsible. One last interesting thing I could tell you. I wrote Srila Prabhupada a letter after I read Krishna book. And I had a realization that I was raised Jewish, but whether raised Jewish or Christian or if you're a Muslim or whatever, nobody knows what God is. And so, could you imagine joining a Hare Krishna movement and there was no Krishna book? There was no 10th canto? You didn't actually know Krishna's pastimes? All you knew was Bhagavad Gita and a few stories you heard? That's it. It's kind of strange, isn't it? That we heard story. Krishna passes urine on people's floors if they catch him stealing butter or something. We heard stories like that. Out of context, we was just trying to make sense of it. So I read a Krishna book and I write Prabhupada a letter, which was kind of an oh my God letter. Like literally, oh my God, I had no idea this is God. I didn't even know that when I joined, because all we have is Bhagavad Gita, so we didn't really know what Krishna does. Does that sound strange to you? You joined a movement, you don't even really know who he is. So we get Krishna book and we read and we find out this is Krishna, and I write Prabhupada my oh my God letter. No, I said, Prabhupada, nobody, I was like a little kid, 5 years old. Prabhupada, nobody knows who God is. Only we know who God is. And Prabhupada answered, yes. We understand. We know who God is. And then yesterday I was listening to a Krishna book reading. And in the Krishna book, Prabhupada says, Krishna comes to remove all speculation as to what God is and show the world, this is what God is. Here I am. Hello, here I am. In case you don't know, I'm God. This is what I look like. This is what I do. That's what Krishna does when he comes. So it was kind of that realization. And Prabhupada I think he was very happy. He just said, yes. Only we know who God is. Hare Krishna. And one time we were in a garden with Prabhupada. And in the evening, Prabhupada would listen to Krishna book. There's a picture of Prabhupada. I will try to demonstrate it, so maybe you remember the picture. He's sitting on a stone bench. I don't know if you can see the bench, but it's a stone bench. There's a garden behind him, like this. Anybody know that picture? That's Prabhupada in his garden in LA listening to Krishna book. Because every night he would listen to Krishna book. And so a few devotees would be invited to listen. And Shruti Kirti would read, and Prabhupada listening to his own Krishna book, just like not even moving, just listening. And then one of the stories they're reading, it said, and there was a voice from the sky. And one devotee said, Srila Prabhupada, who is that voice? And Prabhupada said, some demigod. So if you ever hear a voice from the sky in Krishna book, now you know. Who is it? Some demigod. Once I was with Prabhupada on a morning walk, and there was a professor of religion, I believe, or a religious man, who was very sympathetic to our movement. So this devotee was quoting some things from the Bible to stir up some conversation with Prabhupada. He said, Srila Prabhupada, in the Bible it says, no man has seen God. Prabhupada stops. He said, no fool has seen God. I am not a fool. I have seen God. Hare Krishna. And also, you may not know this, but Srila Prabhupada could be very funny and very sarcastic and could play with devotees. Like he had one devotee, kind of big, and sometimes he would say to his servant, get the fat one. Tell the fat one to come. And he'd call his sister also the fat one. And his sister would say, but Prabhupada, I eat very little, still I'm fat. And Prabhupada would just laugh and turn to his servant and say, does anybody get fat when they eat little? And she's saying she eats little and she's getting fat. So, there was a devotee named Tamal Krishna Maharaj who was extremely competitive person, just by nature. So he was always trying to win all the book distribution marathons. He was the head of a party of brahmacharis, I don't know, 60, 100 brahmacharis. They had like 6 buses that they lived in, and 20 vans, and they traveled all around America. So there was a morning walk, and Rameshwar, who was in charge of the BBT, he was glorifying Hridayananda Maharaj because in South America, which was his zone, books were going where there were no temples. And the BBT would get letters from people in all these cities where there's no temples. And so he was glorifying him. Just see how Hridayananda Maharaj's preaching is going on in South America. People are writing us from cities all over South America where there are no temples. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj is there on a morning walk. So now he's not being glorified. He's, the competitor, number one competitor. Hridayananda Maharaj is being glorified. And Prabhupada stopped Rameshwar. He said, "Don't speak like this. Tamal Krishna Maharaj will have a heart attack." So he was just, he knew Tamal Krishna Maharaj's competitive nature, and so he was making a joke at his cost. And that picture, that famous picture where I'm in the back and there's a group of devotees and everybody's laughing? You must have seen that picture. Maybe you'll remember it. I mean, I was 26, but you can tell more or less it's me. That's when Prabhupada told that joke. Prabhupada was many personalities. He wasn't, like some people want Prabhupada this, he said this, he did this. That's true, but that's not the only thing it's not the only personality he was and the only thing he said. He was very 360, very strict and heavy, very light and funny, very conservative, very liberal, everything. So and anyone says, Prabhupada's like this, like this, like this, that's part of the story. That's maybe the part that devotee is attracted to, but it's only part of the story. That's my experience. Hare Krishna. So we've gone long enough. Some devotees want to share their offerings. Is that the idea?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for giving us the insights, directly the experience from meeting Prabhupada and direct association with Prabhupada. So I would like to really thank you for this. So some of you must be knowing or don't know that today we are celebrating the appearance day of Prabhupada. Yesterday was Janmashtami and today is Prabhupada's appearance day. So who is the ISKCON Samstapaka Acharya. So we are celebrating his appearance day. So it is so amazing that Prabhupada has created such a big family where we have people from Turkey who has served this temple as temple president for more than 19 years sitting here. We have people from Syria, we have people from Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Ukraine, Russia. I know there are temples everywhere all over the world. There are 650 temples right now today. When Prabhupada left, he has created 108 temples.
I think it's up to 850.
Oh, sorry. So it's 850 temples.
Farms, temples, farms, schools.
Temples around the world. So many people. 800 from Sish. So many people think that what India gave us. So software engineers or snake charmers, elephants, but in actuality, India gave us Krishna to all over the world. And through whom? No other than Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this is a great opportunity now. Like as I said, like everybody, Prabhupada has touched everyone's life till now. And today is the great opportunity to say thank you, our heartfelt thank you by everyone. So you must all be knowing that somehow Srila Prabhupada is connected, touch your life. So now I would request all the devotees sitting here, at least speak one line about Prabhupada, how he's touched your life. If he's special, how he's special. if you want to complain to Prabhupada what you are missing, so you can do that also. Because I remember when Bhakti Bhushan Maharaj said, you devotees are having great time. When we used to do Sunday feast, there used to be only Vaisen grace and milk. This rava and milk. That's it. That was Sunday feast. And when he goes for Harinam, he was the only one keeping a Harinam banner to his back and playing Kartal, going for Harinam. And today, when we go for Harinam here, we put it in the group, WhatsApp group, how many people are going. We go with our mics, we go with our mridangas, we go with our kartals, we go in a troop. So we are really having a luxury time in Krishna consciousness. So now, without wasting much time, so I would request all the devotees sitting here, at least speak one line about Prabhupada, how he touched your life. So
You have a wireless microphone?
हम ये काबलों से
You have wireless?
yeah, we have that.
Oh, otherwise what? You're just going to come up here and speak?
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if you can come up in front of the Prabhupada and you can give your offerings to Prabhupada directly.
Whatever you think.
Yes. Everyone can come till this place.
If he gets the wireless mic, yeah, we'll have more devotees, because if they come here, like in front of
So don't feel shy, because this is a great time to be grateful to Prabhupada, to say our thanks.
You start.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So,
I can read the offering for Gauradesh Temple,
Yeah.
for the official book. There's a-
Yeah.
I didn't get it.
She wants to read the official offering
Okay.
for the temple.
which Akshara Prabhu wrote in the name of all of us.
So,
German or English? English.
You don't worry about me.
We have both here. Dear Srila Prabhupada, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharya Nivishesha Shunyavadi Vasatya Dishitali. Thank you so much for another year in Krishna consciousness, for protecting our Gauradesh temple in Cologne, and for praying to Vijay Gauranga and Doyoni Tai to stay with us. Your movement is still immature. Certainly we, your servants in Gauradesh, are still immature. You are overlooking all our mistakes, our foolishness, our lack of sincerity. And unbelievably, you are even grateful for whatever little service we are able to render. We can understand this fact by studying your books, by recordings that have been made of our classes and talks, and by the words of eyewitnesses who met you in person. You have said in letters to your disciples that you are personally responsible for everything that is going on in ISKCON. We are just your assistants, and you have always expressed your gratitude to everyone who was trying his or her best to help. This is what keeps our temple and our movement alive. Your compassion and your gratitude, your patience and your tolerance, your dedication to the service of Krishna, your determination to share devotional service with the whole world and to stay with us until this task is accomplished. We are eternally indebted to you, Srila Prabhupada, for being with us and allowing us to serve the Supreme Lord under your protection and guidance. We are your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Please keep us under the shelter of your lotus feet, your insignificant servants in Gauradesh.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.